This is a reading from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 10, verse 16 and on. See, I am sending you out like sheep into the midst of wolves. So be as wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Beware of them, for they will hand you over to councils and flog you in their synagogues. And you will be dragged before governors and kings because of me as a testimony of them and the Gentiles. The way our culture kind of wants Christianity to function is just the first half of what Christ says here, or the second half actually, innocent as doves. And if you look around in churches, communities, the general culture, but especially within Christianity, we see just this second half of this commandment of Christ in sending out, commissioning his apostles, like sending them out to go preach the gospel. We miss being wise as serpents. It's so interesting that, I don't know, the metaphor is like a serpent and a dove. A serpent is able to strike, a dove is innocent and pure, but I feel like so much we lose the part of the serpent. And when you look around, the Christ that is being preached and proclaimed to others in the media, in churches, and whatever, is all about turning the other cheek. And that is a teaching of Christ. We'll get to that. That is a teaching of Christ, turning the other cheek. But we lose, or like what I feel when I think of the people who, taught me about being a Christian growing up, we lose the power and we lose the strength that Christ had, that God has, God's warrior identity, and we lose how he gives that to us and how we are made in the image and likeness of God. And if we read the Bible, especially the Old Testament, God is a warrior. And oftentimes we kind of hide or shriek from that because the Old Testament can be difficult to read. God smiting down people, Sodom and Gomorrah, Book of Job. Well, God didn't commit the atrocities in the Book of Job, but there are plenty of examples like Noah's Ark. God like wiping away the whole world. And when we sort of diminish like, all of the evil in the Old Testament, not evil, all of the death in the Old Testament is all metaphorical. It's an exaggeration, like LeBron James like killed the enemy. When we do that, when we take it on so metaphorically, we lose the fact that God is powerful. A wonderful verse, I believe it's in Exodus, like as God is helping the Israelites pass the Red Sea, the Israelites exclaim, "The Lord is a warrior, the Lord is his name." The Lord is a warrior. Like, we're not encouraged to follow that part of God's likeness. And that's revealed so plainly in Scripture. In the Old Testament, again, like there's all these battles that we see God helping the Israelites win, helping them, the plagues, like this crazy power that God's has as identity as a warrior. And we don't lose that in the New Testament. God is consistent. I think there's a verse like God's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. That might be a verse. Don't quote that. Look it up first. I probably should have looked it up first. But in the New Testament, we don't lose this identity of God as a warrior. In this verse here, Christ is telling his followers, be as wise as serpents, crafty, shrewd, self-aware, and powerful. Christ says, I have not come to bring peace, but to bring a sword. That's a sword of division, but there's still a sense of power in there. He also says, whoever doesn't have a sword should sell their cloaks, buy a sword. Christ is around. Yes, he preaches. Yes, he's peaceful. But likewise, too, he's casting out demons. He's speaking these bold words of authority, and he's throwing around tables. Like when stuff goes wrong, goes wrong in the temple, there's righteous anger there, and him using, in a sense, some of his power. So I think what's really important here is the paradox. And if we look actually a little earlier in Matthew, in the Beatitudes, the way the Beatitudes are described: peacemakers, pure in heart, merciful, those who mourn, those who hunger, blessed are the meek. The word meek we think of as weak. Meek is more than weak. I actually remember Jordan Peterson, there was some clip of him on a YouTube short a while ago where he's like, meek is those who have swords and know how to use them. You must be dangerous. That's my impression of him. But I actually asked a priest about it, a Jesuit. I was like, hey, this word meek, can you look at it more? And I was so impressed. The guy literally, he's like, okay. He pulls out the Bible in Greek. He's like, So, meek is, in the Greek, it means to meek a horse. to basically put a warhorse, a powerful animal, under control and direct it to a, I guess, higher purpose, like serving it in battle, instead of just running around. You don't meek a kitten, you don't meek a dog, you don't meek a pigeon, you don't meek a dove. You meek a warhorse to control, not to limit its power. So when we are called to be meek, when we are called, as we are called, to turn the other cheek, it is not saying turn the other cheek because that's the only option you have, right? The power and the awe in Christ being crucified is, I think it's in Matthew. He says, "Do you not think that I can appeal to my Father and he will at once send more than 12 legions of angels?" I forget, there's some like estimates. I think that's like, I don't know, over 100,000 angels. And there's accounts of angels like being able to wipe out like 70,000 people like in an instant like that. So Christ is crucified on the cross voluntarily. If Christ were your ordinary man, if Christ were someone who could not come down from the cross right away, it would still be a great thing that Christ did, right? He died for his friends. We hear that in Romans. Not so often is it that someone will die for a good and righteous man, but wait, I'm misquoting this verse. Where is it? It's in Romans. I actually don't want to misquote this. Bear with me. Okay, wait. For while we were still weak, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. Indeed, rarely will anyone die for a righteous person, though perhaps for a good person someone might actually dare to die. But God proves his love for us, in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That's beautiful. If Christ wasn't God, if Christ was a human, that's still beautiful. Dying for sinners, dying for not righteous people, that's beautiful. But it's not as beautiful when there is lack of control, lack of power, when that's, in a sense, the only option because it's inescapable. But that is not the Christ of the Gospels. That is not the God we have as Christians. The God we have is someone, again, do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? The power of Christ and the power of his message is the voluntary submission to God's will to die on the cross. It is impressive to have power. It is impressive to die for people, even if it was your only choice. But what is most impressive is to die, to let yourself be tortured and crucified for sinful people so that they might have life while you didn't have to do that. None of us will ever understand, I guess, how voluntary Christ's action was for us. None of us will ever understand suffering in a way Christ did, where it's so avoidable, where he could so choose to do something else. And we see that beautifully in the agony of the garden. He's wrestling with that. He's like, Father, if it's possible, let this chalice pass from me. But yet eventually he submits to God's will, yet not what I will, but thy will be done. And this is so much more, I guess, like epic of a sacrifice and epic of a decision because of the power of Christ and the power of God and the warrior nature and the strength. But again, the Christianity of today diminishes the strength, and it's just meek and weak. It's not meeking a horse. It's just being weak, like it's castrating people of being in the image and likeness of God, which is God literally, or the Israelites literally are describing God, the Lord is a warrior. But yet that is not the God that we're often preached about. And when you see people, who claim to follow God, oftentimes they are, I don't want to word this wrong, not capable. And it's not like a purely physical thing. Like, that's great. That definitely helps, being able to fight, run, be strong, powerful. That definitely helps. But there's also a power of words, a power of the intellect. Like, I'm thinking, obviously, when we're called to be strength, there's a difference, like masculine and feminine strength. But you could think of like an old nun who's powerful, like with her words, her ability to defend the gospel, who is outspoken against it. She's strong, not in the fact that she can bench press, 2 plates, 3 plates, 4 plates. She is strong in the fact that she is bold and courageous to stand up for Christ. She is strong in her ability to serve others. She is strong in her ability to defend and talk about her faith, and strong in her ability to love. That is what Christ uses his strength for. And strength, courage, power, not necessarily physical, spiritual too. It helps us to love more like Christ. It helps us, the meaning of turn the other cheek. Like, if you imagine, like David and Goliath, if David slaps Goliath and Goliath turns the other cheek, again, I'm just using this as like an image of powerful and weak. If David slaps Goliath and Goliath turns the other cheek, like, doesn't retaliate, that is a lot more impressive than if Goliath like slaps the hell out of David and David like flies away. Like, David had no other choice there. He was in stature so much physically less than Goliath. But we are called to be in that situation. Again, this is like a metaphor from a story, more like Goliath. Like, when we are slapped, when we are disrespected and rebuked, our submission, our suffering well, isn't because, again, hopefully like Christ, we had no other option. It's because we're peacemakers, pure at heart, and merciful, while also being a warrior. That is the call as Christians. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. Follow God, imitate him in all things, especially the warrior nature. God bless.